This is an interview with Professor Carlton Reese for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley. We're at Miles College. This is May 6, 1996. Thank you, Professor Reese, for coming and taking time out of your schedule to sit and talk with me today.
You're welcome, sir.
I just want to start by asking some general questions. Tell me just a bit about your background, about your mother and father. Were they from Birmingham?
Yes. No, my father was from Plantersville, Alabama. My mother was from Birmingham, Alabama. Both of them are deceased. And my father's name was Theodore Roosevelt Reese Sr., and my mother's name was Cornelia Gales Reese.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What about their education? They educated in the Birmingham school system?
Well, my father's education only went to the sixth grade, mm-hmm. and my mother finished Fairfield High School.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And Fairfield, there's been a lot of folk come out of that Fairfield school system.
My wife is there now teaching.
Is that right?
At Fairfield High School now.
Yes. Uh-huh. You were born then in Birmingham.
I was born in Birmingham in a little steel plant community called Westfield, Alabama.
Westfield.
Yes.
Westfield is noted all over the country.
It certainly is.
Well, your alumni association.
Right. You're right.
Brothers and sisters, how many did you have, and where did you fit into that?
Well, let's see. I was the fourth child of 8 children. My older brother, who was Theodore Roosevelt Reese Jr., and the second brother, who was a student here at Miles College. The second brother, who is Lord Gales Reese, who resides now in Patterson, New Jersey, who is a graduate of Miles College as well. My sister, Catherine Reese Williams, who resides now in Clarksville, Tennessee. And I graduated from Miles College as well in the year of 1964 in the field of sociology and history.
Well, there's a Miles tradition that runs through the Reese family.
You're right. Oh, my other sisters and brothers, let's see, another brother, Joseph, who played football here at Miles College, and Mary and John, mm-hmm. and Cornelia, which was a baby who died early, mm-hmm. in the early, let's say, I guess about 6 months after birth.
I see.
Yes.
Well, tell me, you lived in Westfield.
Westfield.
You started elementary school there in Westfield.
Certainly.
And you tell me just a bit about your elementary days in Westfield.
Well, I was a student at Westfield number 2 from the first grade to the 4th grade, and then I went to Westfield number 1 school, and I went there from the 5th grade through the 8th grade. And then I went to Westfield High School from the 9th grade through the 12th grade and graduated in 1960, then entered Miles College. What
was the community of Westfield like?
Well, it was just like just a regular little country community. You know, they had those steel plant houses, they have double-tenant houses, some single houses, and we lived near the commissary out there in Westfield, and where everybody was just closely knit together, somewhat like a Peyton place. You know, everybody, if you needed some sugar, you go next door and borrow the sugar. If you needed something else, we were just that kind of neighbors, certainly different from what we are now, because many times we don't even know our neighbors now in the communities where we live now. But it was just like that, and so a little closely knitted, and we started out early with our mothers and fathers being sure that we entered Sunday school and stayed involved in religious activities doing that, because basically that was all we had to be involved in, unless it was our schoolwork, you know.
Now, this was a company town, right?
Yes.
And what company?
Well, United States Steel.
Yes.
United States Steel. We were surrounded by the steel plant. My father worked in the steel plant for over 46 years in the structure mill there. And the steel plant was, I guess, about 6 or 7 blocks from our house, you know.
Did your mother work outside of the home?
My mother was a housewife. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so she had her hands full with the 8 of you.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Tell me about your days at Westfield High School. Were you involved in extracurricular activities?
Well, yes. I was involved in a lot of curricular activities. I was in the Hawaii. I was in the choir. I organized a lot of programs for the school to raise money for the school, and got involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, and was just involved with the academic program, and just involved in everything just about around the school, you know.
Right.
And in fact, when I finished from high school, I was awarded the all-around boy medal, you know, as one of the honors.
Very active.
Yes.
Yes. What is there anything that stands out in your mind about those days at Westfield High School?
Well,
any teachers maybe.
Well, I just remember. I remember Mr. C.L. Reeves as being principal of that school. He was a very efficient administrator. And after he left, Mr. Paul Ware was there, and he followed him, and he was very efficient in his work, and he carried out a strong line as far as discipline is concerned in school, and we were taught by some of the better teachers. In fact, those Jefferson County teachers were labeled as some of the best teachers that could ever been in any system, because we were really taught well.
That's right. Many of those teachers actually went off in the summer and went to Michigan State,
right.
UCLA, because they could not go to the University of Alabama.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Mine being from Winona, in the Jefferson County school system.
Oh, yes.
Very much aware of that.
Yes. They would go off during the summer and come back with new innovations to teach us.
That's right.
And we just learned a lot in high school. Absolutely. It was a very good experience.
What did you do after high school?
Well, upon finishing high school in 1960, I entered Miles College. And I was at Miles College for the next 4 years and graduated in the year of 1964.
Were you still active in extracurricular activities at Miles?
Yeah, well, yes, I was active in extracurricular. I used to play for, my brothers and myself, we all used to play for all the chapel programs and other extracurricular activities, you know, just got involved in a lot of little things, you know.
How did you get involved in music?
Well, my family, even before learning anything about the technicalities of music, the mechanical parts of music, my family is musically inclined. Before we learned anything about written music at all, we were all playing from memory. They used to say they play by ear, you know, but it was just a gift, God-given gift. In the beginning, my mother played, my father played, and it was just through the family, you know, and we just learned how to play, you know.
What was that like growing up in a musical family? I mean,
well, it certainly was an interesting thing, because we never thought that we all would, well, most of us were going to be musicians, you know. And we started early, like I started playing for church when I was 4 years of age, you know.
4 years?
4 years, and I was playing little songs, little Sunday school songs, and then after then I started playing for the little junior choir, you know. And in fact, my other brother started the same way, you know, and then we began to play for community activities and school programs and this sort of thing, just developed on, you know, and just continued to build the talent, you know.
Yeah. So you were real active then throughout your elementary school days, your high school days,
right,
and then into your college days.
My college days, yeah.
You were still very active, and of course active. Developing all along.
Right.
And then, of course, you become known as the movement's musician.
Yeah, I was known as a musician, songwriter, and director of the movement.
Tell me, how did that get started?
Well, I was active in the movement during the 50s, because I used to play and sing in the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights here in Birmingham, Alabama, and carry other talents in to make music for the movement.
This is while you were in high school?
Yeah, this was while I was in high school. We used to go and sing for the movement, because it was a religious organization where they all went and they had preaching and singing and different ones all over the community to get the people involved in the movement so they could see what it was to make a sacrifice for the cause of freedom, justice, and equality, you know.
Well, do you remember the initial move to get involved with the movement choir? Did someone recruit you?
Well, as far as the movement choir was concerned, we got involved in the movement. We were already, as I said, we were already involved in it.
Okay.
And Reverend Shuttlesworth and some more members of the choir, along with some of the members like Dr. King and the rest of them who came in with them, requested that I become real active in the movement during just before the 60s by taking over that choir and making it be an active part in that, because music was very important in the movement, and people began to respond a lot when they hear music, because without a song, the day would never end. And we realized that, and so when they asked me if I would take on the responsibility, I told them I would, and I got into it and began to write songs and teach them many of my original numbers and write numbers in the movement and teach them a lot of gospel numbers and other songs that other people were doing, so that we could do the kind of things that were necessary to provide the kinds of music that was necessary to get people involved in the movement.
What were some of the songs, some of the original songs that you wrote?
There were many songs like "I Want to Be Free," songs like "Old Freedom," songs like "I Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around." And these songs were done here in Birmingham, and then they were moved all over the United States of America. People began to sing them everywhere, and we had the songs that we did like "I'm on My Way to Freedom Land," and just a number of numbers that so many numbers that "Since Jesus Came to Birmingham," "I'm Happy as Can Be," "Oh, What a Great Day for Me," and it's so many I just can't name them all at one time.
What actually inspired you to be able to come up with these tunes?
Well, one thing that inspired me to do a lot of writing was because the activists would come in. Fred Shuttlesworth would come in, Dr. King would come in, Wyatt T. Walker, Bevel, and all the other activists would just come in, and they were talking about the issues and the needs, the sacrifices that need to be made and what we need to do. And so as they talked, I thought of lyrics to certain songs and put the tune to them. Many of them were original. Some of them were arranged songs that were similar to some of the gospel tunes, and we just took them all and put them together, and they were really effective.
Well,
people all over the nation came in these movement meetings, and while we were sitting there writing these songs and singing these songs, a lot of them were copyrighted, and we received no credit for it, but we know that we did them. So at least I know that I did a lot of writing and didn't get a lot of credit for it.
Did
but
you
I think
copyright
the credit,
any of your songs?
Yeah, some, but there were some that were copyrighted years before I knew anything about it. When I was invited to come to Smithsonian Institute to do a workshop, I found then that there were many numbers copyrighted in songbooks there at Smithsonian Institute and other parts of Washington.
Copyrighted by people other than yourself?
Yeah, copyrighted by people who sat in the movement and brought their tapes and recorded numbers and just carried them back. And they were writing stories. You'd be surprised at why we had our minds on becoming free and this kind of thing. People were taking this back so they could make a living,
right?
Because they knew it was going to be really history, and we weren't really thinking about it at that time, We were really thinking about making a way for people to become free in Birmingham, Alabama, and abroad, So,
has anyone that has taken any of that music ever contacted you to talk with you about their copyrights and about your music?
There have been, well, I won't call any names, but there have been, I guess, about 7 or 8 people who have come to me and told me that where they got the tunes that they've gotten, and even in one of our hymn books, some of our numbers right there in our hymn book just listed as American folk song, and people just go on with. But I've never tried to really fight about it, because I feel like I'll get my just reward, and the Lord has been good to me, So I feel that I've contributed a lot because the music played an integral part of the civil rights, and still plays an integral part of the civil rights movement.
Why was music so important?
Well, one thing we must remember, that music tames the wildest beast. That's an expression that everybody loves music. When a person is sad, he wants to find a song that makes him glad. When he gets weary, he finds something that makes him cheer up. And music just, when you ride along the song, ride along in your car, and you flip on that radio and you hear a song that relates to your feelings or relates to some kind of story or some kind of experience that you've encountered, it just brings joy to your soul, And so that's, and people just relate to music, Even in our churches today, we know what the truth is about the Word of God, But you'd be surprised that people will come to church just to hear some good music.
Are you still writing music?
Yes, I'm writing some secular music. I'm getting ready to write some old gospel music now and record a new album. It's been some time since I recorded an album, but at this time I'm going to be recording some old songs,
What about movement music? Is there any need for the kind of music that you were developing during the time of the struggle?
Let me say this. There's always a need to write movement music, freedom music. Any person who is in music will be inspired by whatever happens at that time, like for instance, if at this time, if movement meetings come up again, and then they have them like they used to have them, we get involved again, and according to what's happening in the movement, it would inspire us to write, And it becomes very easy to write when you're actually involved in the situation where there's a need for it.
It sounds as if you had a full-time chore just by developing the kinds of music that you were developing, but you were also actively involved in demonstrations. Is that correct?
Yes.
You were arrested.
Yes.
Certainly. Do you remember your first demonstration?
Well, I remember distinctly. One of the first one was when I led the students from Miles College from here.
Okay.
I guess it was about 150, 175 of us. We went out through 5 Points, 5 Points West, and we were arrested down in that area.
In 5 Points.
Yeah, going on to Birmingham, Birmingham, Alabama. A lot of students got involved, not only from Miles College, and when the other students heard from about the marches and demonstrations, they came out of other schools as well, and got involved. Another time I was in a demonstration down near Kelly Park when the dogs were out there. I got bit a little by the dogs, but I didn't care about that because of the fact that Dr. King and Dr. Shuttlesworth and all of the other activists reminded us that we were not to fight back, and we were to be able to endure all of these experiences, and which brought us where we are now.
An official from the 60s, a city official from the 60s, was on the radio program one day, and I heard him say that although dogs were there, not a single individual was ever bit by a dog.
Well, that wasn't true. There were numbers of people who got bit by the dogs. There were a number of people who encountered a lot of experiences by being beaten by the police and just other brutalities. It was just an experience that we'll never forget. Another time I went to jail was during Good Friday. I went to jail then, and every time I got in jail, they would get me out and I'd go back into the movement because, at that time I really, and I'm still dedicated to the movement because I'm in SCLC now and the Birmingham Alliance as well. But at that time I was so dedicated to the movement till I was so anxious to get out of jail to get back so that I could go back in the movement and play and keep things going. We kept the morale up with the people. When the activists were late coming on the planes, we kept it going, and we just did a lot of things in the movement that caused people to make a sacrifice and get up and go out in the streets and march. So really, they were singing the movement and then leave out singing and move on out into the streets and just march, And
on the demonstration that you led from Miles College, headed downtown, you were arrested at 5 Points. Where did they take you?
City jail.
To city jail.
Yeah, and it was packed. It was packed.
How did they get you? You had 150 of them.
Well, they had paddy wagons coming. A lot of them got away now.
Okay.
A lot of them, and then when the paddy wagons started coming, a lot of them ran. At one time, I tried to move out into another section, but they got me because they knew that I was active in leading other people to come in the demonstrations. So it was just one of those things. They put us in jail, and we were all crowded, didn't have anywhere to sleep, but we weren't worried about sleeping so much because we carried on a lot of singing and praying in the jails, and the guards and all the people in charge of all the prisons, they would get highly upset because when white people would hear this kind of singing, it kind of got next to them, They really couldn't stand that kind of thing because, you see, it's something about the kind of singing that black folk do that stir the hearts of people. And I'm not saying that other ethnic groups cannot sing, but I'm saying that this is a kind of thing that represents trials and tribulations, that kind of music now. We're used to anthems and hymns, and we're used to much folk music, but that down-heart gospel and old Dr. Watts songs, that means that represents trials and tribulations and all those kinds of experiences. When people mistreat you, they can't stand that kind of thing.
So you think that the music actually inspired or reached some of those individuals
Certainly.
that were...
The music reached a lot of people. The music reached people. We wrote songs like, I've got a job, you've got a job, all of God's children surely have a job. We've got a job to do. We can't get freedom until we get through carrying the cross for our rights. And we talked about people like Boo O'Connor, how mean Boo O'Connor was, you know what I mean? And at that time, Boutwell was there. We talked about Governor Wallace, and we just made the people aware of a whole lot of things. And the other white people could not stand this kind of thing. And that's why they would be rebellious with putting up with us doing this kind of thing that would really provoke their thinking, Right.
Mm-hmm. You also arrested at Cresses, is that right?
Yes. Well, I sat in at Cresses.
Okay, that was a sit-in.
Yeah, it was a sit-in.
Tell me about that.
Well, we were instructed that, we've been instructed, we were instructed from day one that nonviolence was the way, and it still is the way. We sat in at Cresses, and they didn't want to wait on us. They called us niggas. They spat on us. They did everything to try to keep us from sitting there, but we sat. And
This is at a lunch counter?
This is at the lunch counter. We sat, and we sat there until many of them began to physically push us out in there. Because I did get arrested. I didn't get arrested on that charge, but many others got arrested for sitting in at Cresses, and not only Cresses, the bus station and other places, as well.
But you were not arrested at the
Not
Cresses?
at Cresses.
Okay.
I sat in there, though.
Okay. And you were also arrested on Good Friday?
Right.
Tell me about the circumstances.
Well, the circumstances were just like the other circumstances. We were all fighting for freedom, justice, and equality, and it was a thing about bringing us all together. And they had already, the police were already set to throw us all in jail, when this kind of thing happened. And it was just a thing where we all marched, and they, many of us got beaten on, but we kept going. We were instructed that you must keep going, and you must not fight back, because fighting back would only make them retaliate and cause a whole lot of, cause even death,
More brutality.
Right.
You said that you were attacked by the dogs.
Yeah.
What about the water hosers?
Well, I wasn't attacked by the water hose, but the water hose was out there. If I had not moved out of the way, I would have been attacked.
So you had to be mobile in order to...
Yeah, you have to know how to get out of the way, So there were many others who got the water hose and this sort of thing. And knocked a lot of just knocked them to the ground, But these experiences made us even more determined to fight for our brothers, And it was not only just for black folk; it was for white folk and all other minority groups, So, and we were taught this, that the movement was not for black folk only. The black the movement was for anybody who needed to fight for their civil rights. If they need their civil rights, we needed to fight for them so they could receive the same kinds of liberties that others receive.
Were there any whites involved in the movement at that time?
There were some whites, not from Birmingham, Alabama, but there were other whites from other areas who had experienced being involved in movement activities, and they came down to be a part of it, like people like Guy Carroll, well, a lot of other folk, came in. Because Guy was one of the ones.
What was his name?
Guy Carroll.
And where was
he? Was one who was writing some songs too. He has written a lot of songs. I won't make any negative comment about it, but he and his wife have done a lot of writing.
Where were they from?
And if I'm not mistaken, they're from Tennessee. And I'm mistaken.
But you're suggesting that there were whites that came into town, but there was no one that was here on a day-to-day basis.
Not on a day-to-day basis. There were a few people who came in. There were a few people in, and well, let's say you could kind of count them. You could count them there, but it was not in order that whites get involved in that.
Right.
Whites have become more lenient now than they were back then because of the rules that have been passed, And then I imagine many of them would have wanted to be a little more cordial toward blacks, but because of the trouble they knew they would get into with their class of people,
Right.
Because of this, a lot of white people didn't know black people because they're the only black people they knew. I mean, that's because of the rules. They didn't get a chance to learn black people because the only people they knew were the people who worked out of their kitchens and raised their children and sort of thing. They never thought that blacks had any kind of ability, but there's some smart black folk, and people have to realize that, and they got a chance to learn that after so many years of being involved in the movement, and they got a chance to learn that black people have brains just like everybody else. We have some smart people.
Yes.
Yes.
In your efforts to demonstrate, were there ever any times when you became fearful because of what you were doing?
Well, no, not at all. Because I was never afraid to get involved. I have a few members of my family who were afraid. I never shall forget a member of my family was working as an instructor in the school system.
The Birmingham school system?
In the Birmingham school system, Jefferson County school system. And but my relative was sort of afraid for me and was afraid for herself and her job, And that was one of the things that a lot of people, that caused a lot of people to become afraid because they knew they were going to lose their job. But many of us who did not have those jobs could do more than them. They could do more than those who were employed,
Right.
And so in order to keep their jobs, they just didn't want their names called, even though they were with it. There were other people who didn't demonstrate, but they did other things, And I think this was a lot of people just found other means, but there were people like Lucinda B. Rober who didn't give a rip. Lucinda B. Rober was a school principal, and she knew what her rights were, and she was there at that movement day in and day out. And
where was she a principal?
She was, I don't know if she was at Dupie Elementary School, but she was at one of the schools in Birmingham, Alabama, and she was one who was not afraid to speak out, and that she would always be remembered for that. And there were others who wanted to, they were afraid. There were others who cooperated in many other ways. So whatever contribution everybody gave, we appreciate everything that everybody did. But we do know that the sacrifices that we made, not boastfully, but in all sincerity, opened the doors for many people in Birmingham and the state of Alabama and the world, because it was because of the Civil Rights Museum. I mean, not the Civil Rights Museum, because of the Birmingham situation that the Civil Rights Bill was passed.
Right.
And it was a hard struggle because it was a struggle for me, period. I tell you, because when I finished school, when I finished Miles College, I couldn't get a job in Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, you could not get a job?
I could not get a job in Birmingham, Alabama, because the superintendent told me that I had been to jail and I had been involved in that movement, which was not good. And so I had to go to Mississippi and teach school for a couple of years. And after teaching school in Mississippi, I came back to the outskirts of Birmingham in the Shelby County school system. I got hired there. And I worked there for over 24 years. I went through a lot of mental stress there, still being nonviolent as I was taught to be. And but I don't regret going through that mental stress because
what kind of mental stress did you go through in the school system?
I went through, after some of them found out that I was a part of the movement, then I encountered a lot of experiences. I care not to go into all of them because I still remain nonviolent. But the Lord saw fit that I could endure a whole lot of things, and out of it, some good came.
Mm-hmm. Can't you talk about those? You can talk about some of them. You can remain nonviolent, but just share them with us. What is your most memorable occurrence that took place in the Shelby County school system as a result of your movement involvement?
Well, let me just say this. It's stressful when you find out that people are still carrying on segregation mm-hmm. and having having in their mind that they still don't want to mingle with blacks, mm-hmm. and figuring out means and ways by which they can do tactics in order to get rid of blacks. Every time a black goes out, a black moves into another system replaced with a white, and and then sometimes people will pretend that they're going to give you a position and never give you this position, and it causes stressful problems and this sort of thing. And
these are occurrences that took place after integration.
Yeah, mm-hmm, yeah, and and one thing we must still remember that as long I don't know, I hope as Dr. King and Dr. Shuttleworth and all the other civil rights activists say that one day all of us will become free, but we've got to remember that as long as this world exists, there's still going to be prejudices. It's going to be prejudice with white and black and white and other minority groups, and then it's going to be prejudice among our own cultural groups, So we just have to adjust and get ourselves immune to the fact and the cognitive of the fact that these things are going to happen,
I've asked a number of people this question about the movement and to give a description of a mass meeting. How would you describe a mass meeting?
Well, as you know, and all of us know that the only thing that black people have had to depend on is a church. So the mass meeting is similar to a good church meeting, a down-home church meeting. And instructions given in that church meeting as to what to do about certain issues that need to be addressed, about the struggle and what to do and this sort of thing. But we always remember that in order to receive anything, we must keep God on our mind and be guided by the Holy Spirit as to what steps to make in any situation. It consisted of old-time singing, as I said before about the Dr. Watts hymns. It consisted of good gospel singing and good old-time praying and talking about what people used to do and how we can take those things we used to do and make some changes and make things better. It just consisted of a lot of preaching and singing. This is what the movement was all about, and the bringing in togetherness of people, and it was a thing that really brought people together because, as I said, basically, black people know that to be involved in church activities is one thing that guide our successes in life,
Right.
Because the black church is the only thing that we could depend on. So the movement The mass meeting was just like a good old Holy Ghost church meeting.
You've been involved in the movement through your high school days, through your college days. You were a participant in demonstrations. After you returned to the high school or to college, your college classes, how were you received by your peers and by your teachers?
Well, in the beginning, there were some teachers who did not go along with the struggle because they were not ready for change. And they thought it was going to deprive them of something that they were going to get, you know. So they weren't very complimentary. Not all of them now. A lot of them were not complimentary. They didn't encourage to get involved, you know. But no one ever really showed me any negative side of them about being involved in the movement because number one, if I heard anybody started to say anything about me being in it, I didn't want to hear it anyway because my mind was on one thing, to provide some experiences and to get involved so that our people could be free. And we have a lot to be thankful of. We have a lot to be thankful about of the experiences that we've encountered because we've accomplished so much, but now we must not keep our eyes closed now because we are not yet free. We're still encountering a lot of experiences that may not be like they used to be. They might be on a white-collar basis, you know. But now we've got to keep our eyes open because if we don't watch it, you know, we'll be going back into slavery like we used to if we're not very careful.
It's interesting. So you're suggesting then that there's a need for some activity that may be similar to movement activity today?
Yeah, it all depends on what the situations are. If it's time to march again, fine. Sometimes marching may not be the answer to the problem at a certain time. There may be some other issue, and there may be meeting behind closed doors, talking together. It might be some other means and ways. But if the time comes that we need to do this sort of thing again, if that's what it calls for, if it calls for that, then we all should get involved together. You know, we should not spread ourselves out so thin and try to get involved in these activities for ourselves. Now, you know, all of our civil rights organizations ought to blend in together. You know what I mean? My mind just went off thinking about how divided sometimes we can get in these organizations, but we must continue to plan activities that would keep us together even if we have to demonstrate again. That means that one organization will not pull away from another, try to so that they can get the glory for doing this sort of thing. It's a thing where we should come together and for one common cause and make it work, you know.
I've heard that there is an activity such as that is developing today. But let me ask you, how supportive was your family of your involvement in the movement, and were your brothers and sisters involved also?
Well, my brothers and sisters were not involved in the movement. Well, my older brother, Theodore, after a certain period of time, died. Lord was off into the army, and it moved away. And my other sisters and brothers were not actively involved but my father was altogether with me being a part of the movement because he knew the importance of us becoming free. And he always taught me that regardless said, he would hear them say, well, don't say yes, sir, to them white folk. And so my daddy said, well, you can say yes, sir, to them if they deserve to say yes, sir, to if he's your boss or if it's something you want out of him, say yes, sir, and get it, you know. And he says not being Uncle Tom when it's done appropriately, you know. And then he taught me to fight for whatever I thought was right as far as my human dignity is concerned.
What are you most proud of in relationship to your contributions or accomplishments in the movement?
Well, I'm proud that my music was spread all over the world, really. I'm proud. Even though, as I said, I didn't get credit for some of it, but in reality with God, I got credit for it because I do that it made a change for caused a lot of people to make these sacrifices for the cause of freedom, and the change has made a new light in the world. Many people and a lot of people don't really realize how important it was to be involved in it, and a lot of people don't realize why they got their jobs now. They don't realize that the sacrifices that were made by not only myself, but all of the persons who sacrificed in all the ways that were the sacrifices were made to bring about a change in this society. It was made for the good of people, you know. It was meant for the good of people. So everybody who's working a white-collar job now ought to be proud that the movement exists. And they should never forget from whence we've come. We've come a long way, but yet we still have a long way to go.
The song, We Shall Overcome. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. Did you take that and do anything with that music?
Yes, that We Shall Overcome was written from the old gospel song, I'll overcome. I'll overcome, I'll overcome someday. If in my heart I believe I'll overcome someday. And it became the theme song, really, of the whole movement. We Shall Overcome. It's the unity song that when you fold your arms, you put it together and with the unity fold, which means that all of the obstacles that we're encountering, one day we're going to overcome. One day we're going to sit down and worship together. One day we're going to be able to walk the streets together. Little black boys and little white boys will be able to pray together. Little white girls and little black boys will be able to pray together, sing together, and go to school together. We shall overcome. And everywhere you go, whether it be in the United States of America, whether it be outside of the country, you hear people singing We Shall Overcome because it became a national song. And it was a song of peace, a song of understanding, a song of hope that one day we will overcome all of the obstacles and all of the means of prejudices and all of the things that would keep us from not being together. One day we'll overcome.
Was this one of your tunes that you
wrote
that?
I wrote that. And if you look in the hymn book, you will find that it's written as an American folk song. I don't talk about a lot of things because of the fact a lot of times you talk about things, you know, people say, well, this, that, and other, they have their own views about certain things. But I thank God that I was able to do some things and write some things that I know was a blessing to this world.
That, of course, was obviously an international contribution.
That's right.
Because people are singing that when the wall went down in East Germany.
I know.
Separate East and West Germany.
That's right.
That was the tune that they used. And
so I really am proud that the Lord gave me the kind of ability He gave me to write a lot of these songs and put them together and to be a blessing through my talent, you know. And I hope it'll continuously be a blessing. I hope I can do some things in the future that will cause people to make sacrifices and this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will be. We've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything that we did not cover that you can remember about the movement that you would like to share with us?
Well, I know that being in the movement was and still is a sacrifice that any person will make. But in order to receive the kinds of liberties, the kinds of freedoms, justices, and equalities, one must involve himself in the situation so that he can make whatever it is that he's seeking to obtain become a reality. And you can't do it unless you get yourself involved and be a part of what's going on. If it's you cannot be a nervous Nelly. You got to be involved. You got to get up and get yourself involved in the activities so that you can say that it's something that we did. Never depend on the other man to do it all himself. Get involved so you can say that we accomplished this thing together. And basically, I think it's a rewarding experience that any person get involved in the civil rights struggle and any other activity that can help to create beautiful young people, to help them mold their lives to be what they want to be in life, regardless of what color they are.
How does it make you feel to go through the Civil Rights Institute and see a young Carlton Reese?
Well, I thank the Lord that my music is there, and I thank the Lord for what they have placed in the Civil Rights Museum. As far as I understand it, well, a small picture of myself is in there.
That's right.
In the museum, Of course, many citizens of Birmingham and around us confronted me as to why they didn't have a larger picture in there.
Right.
Because, and I'm not conceited, I'm not worried about it because of the contribution that many of us actually made here in Birmingham, Alabama. They don't only talk about myself, they talk about others perhaps who have contributed a lot to the struggle that perhaps they don't see enough of them in the museum. But I think that this oral history project is one of the ways that they are trying to involve everybody who perhaps have taken a part in the movement so that people can see what everybody has done. And those who have been asked to come and interview, to be interviewed, can share their experiences so that everybody will know, those others who feel that they're not involved, that everybody will know that they did have a part in it. So I'm grateful for any part that they place in there. Anything that I've done, I'm grateful for any of it. So that it could be a blessing to let people know, or maybe my children, their grandchildren, and others who will come along to know what some of us have done in the movement.
I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, and we certainly do appreciate it, and we do know that you submitted names for us to interview as well.
Yes.
We thank you for that, and we just thank you for your overall contribution toward the struggle.
Well, I certainly appreciate the Civil Rights Institute and you, Dr. Huntley, for asking me to come to be interviewed, and certainly if I can be of any service at any time, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, Professor Reese.
You're welcome, sir.
Well,